Hey YouTube, in this video I'm doing another analysis of my start. So on the right, we have a start that I used to run a 749 and a 60, and I also run a 200, though the 200 is basically void because I slowed down, so it's not the most useful. Though I know that if I didn't slow down, I would have been able to break 24. And then on this left side, we have a start that is about, I would say, 7.3 for a 60, and for 100 this start allowed me to run not actually no, I think I had to start after that, so this start would be roughly equivalent to like an 11.4 because I think I used this to run 11.36. So let's start with the video on the right. I'll just play actually. So you sound of this. Okay, cool. I'll just play it. Go. There's no panning of the camera, but it's fine. The main important thing is we want to see the positions that I'm in. So if you look carefully, if you look at my feet, you can see that my feet are completely pushed against the blocks, which is something that we want. The only thing is they're completely in the blocks. There's variants of how people want to do this, but generally, if you're not very comfortable with the blocks, I would say you'd want to have your foot touching the floor a bit, because if you're not comfortable in the blocks, this is why you'd be slipping out of the blocks, because you're not able to push, you don't have to push out of the blocks properly. At this time, I wasn't able to completely push out of the blocks efficiently, so it's quite a surprise I didn't stumble at the blocks, but let's continue to look. I'm up, and the angle to the floor with my arms, as you can see, is about 70 degrees. It's not efficient. Like I've said in my other video, you want to be getting about this 90 degrees. You want to be behind the line. You want our arms behind the line, not in front of it. The angles of my back feet, they look like it's about 90 to 120, which is good. We want this leg to be about 90, which it is, and we want the back leg to be around 120, which it is, though this is rough, so it's a bit, but it is about 120, which is good. Now the push, okay, so if you look at that back leg, look at how it's moving. It just comes straight up. There's no backwards motion. It just comes straight up basically. And if you look at my hips, they're rising before my back leg even decides to start to move, or just my back. But that's that's indicative of me using my quads to push out the blocks, not my hips. And the reason why this happened was because around the time I had this race, it was the first time I ever met my coach, and it was about, I was given a week or less with him, because I think I had this race on Saturday and I met him first on Tuesday. So I was given 4 or 5 days, how many days that is, I'm not going to calculate, to quickly learn how to try and use my hips and my glutes, which is why I only ran a 7.49 with my start instead of a faster time, because I was only really efficient for the first 20 meters, 30 meters, and then that was just basically natural talent. And then after that, at that point, I was ahead of everyone because I didn't have a 60 time, so I wasn't really steered well. But then after that, I didn't open up because I didn't know how to open up my hips and my glutes yet, so I wasn't able to get a faster time. Otherwise, I would have ran faster on this day. But as you can see, my hips, my glutes specifically, they rise up instead of rolling forwards, and my foot, it just drives forwards instead of pushing backwards and coming up. The front foot pushes, but that's obviously going to happen if I'm going to leave the blocks, but we want the back foot to be pushing as well. And I come up and then I drive out. So I don't know how strong this start really is, because I don't remember how I felt when I was doing it, but this isn't the most efficient start I could achieve because I wasn't properly pushing out the blocks. I didn't know how to fire out of the blocks whilst I was doing this. I was even watching someone who I know who runs about 10.4 come out of the blocks. I was like, how is he so powerful? I want to be able to do that. I'm not even sure if I can, because our body types look different. And the reason why I wasn't able to is because I'm just pushing out with my quads. So if you actually look at a proper sprinter push out. You might be able to see it on the left video. I'm not too sure. When they push out of the blocks, if it's visible, you see the foot drop back, and as they come off, the block will rattle. I don't think the block rattled in that video, and I don't even think I can make the block rattle even now. But that's basically the goal, because it means you're really pushing out the glutes and you have really really good control of them. So my legs extend, and my feet get into position, and I'm pretty sure this is the furthest out. Yeah, this is the furthest out I allow myself to go. If you look carefully, because of my position in the blocks when I was coming out, my position coming out is quite high. The angle, let's see. My angle coming out of the blocks is about 26. Nope, it's more. It's about 30 degrees compared to videos where I've gotten close to 14 degrees, I believe. So this isn't really the best, but it just goes to show how much I've improved. And then if you look at my arms are bent. This one anyway, the front arm is fine. It should be in this position, and I should have this much range of motion with the second arrow. So there's still a lot of work to be done. And because of this bent arm, this is basically optimized for a 60. Because for something longer than a 60, I'll just be wasting energy. And then I come and my foot essentially just drops. If you look at the front foot, it extends out and it swings this way as I try to come down. So I don't really get to push down. If you actually look at my quads, you can see they don't really shift. The position of it doesn't change. It stays roughly about the same as my body naturally travels through the air. Then it's only when it lands that it drops, so I can get to the next step. And then from there, my landing mechanics, they seem all right. It could be a bit better. I could be landing a bit more underneath me, because the goal would essentially be to get my knee to, if this is a 2D picture, to touch my other shin, but it's not. So there's still obviously room for improvement there. But my arms, they do drive down, then I switch out into my next step, which is as wide as I can make it, and there's not much range of motion, because my leg should be able to get to there roughly, which would mean that my hips would be about where this arrow is at the end. That's how long my leg should roughly be, maybe a bit shorter, but not too much. But I'm not able to do that, and my arms again still bent, which is very good. And I push, then I'm landing in front of me, as you can see, because that's my center of mass, and my foot itself is in front of that instead of behind it. So this, again, room for improvement, which results in me having to roll over. I'm pretty sure the first step was just like that too, but I'm not going to check. And then it's only on the third step, I'd say it might even be the camera angle, where my foot is landing directly underneath me. And that's basically the start that I had. The angles as I was coming out of the block. Actually, another thing I forgot to mention is, if you just look at this front leg, you can tell I'm not using my glutes to push out the blocks, because if I was, my knees would drop as I do, but my leg just extends forwards. It never drops down, which is something that obviously I've worked on and I've fixed, so I'm able to get that drop. I'm not even sure if it happens in this video. No, it doesn't even happen in this video, because I was still trying to figure out how to do it, even though it was a bit later. The angles for the first step, as I came out of the blocks, is around 34, which is roughly a bit bigger than the angles I pushed out of the blocks, which isn't too bad. And on the third step, obviously you can see there's a big change, which isn't very good. Because back then, I was very used to sprinting like this, so my body was basically always in sync. So the angle is 52 from 34, which is a big jump. So once that happened, the rest of my body basically ended up in that angle too, I'm pretty sure. Like it's supposed to. Because your body follows the positioning of your shins, essentially. Yeah, it's starting to pop up. And I'm pretty sure I was lower than that earlier on in the other steps. If you go to this one and check. I kind of stayed about the same actually, which is a bit puzzling. I don't know what I did in between that somehow. But that was just the start I used to get me a 749. The arm mechanics really were not the best, but it was a 60, which is wow, I was lucky. I got off. I got off easy, and it was an indoor 200 where you had to make sharp turns. So I really did get off easy with this. If I was doing this outdoors, I would have been punished. And then for this start, 2 areas of focus: the foot and the hip height. As you can see, in fact, there's 3 again. That front knee. Oh, that front knee right there. As you can see, the foot pushes back, which is good. But that's because I was purposely trying to push it back. You can still push back into the block with your quads. But my hips, they also rise instead of going straight forwards, though the motion is a bit better. But you can tell that I'm not using my glutes because that knee doesn't drop, the front knee, which is why I'm not able to be as efficient as I want to be. But other than that, the angles out of the blocks are still quite good. My arms are in a much better position than how they used to be, because then here, they can still be about maybe even here, I'd say. And when I use this arrow, I mean like the middle of my arm is where this arrow is. I'm not saying this is the highest. I'm not saying I just basically straighten out my arm and I'm able to pull that off. And then the next step, well, the first step really, you can actually see my quads shift down and backwards as I'm able to push. This only really happened because I just got more used to using the blocks though. So you look carefully and then my quads drop before I even touch the ground. As you can see, I'm not on the ground yet. I push out and it shifts down and then I hit the ground. And when I hit the ground, I'm directly underneath my central mass, which is good for the first step. I finally figured out how to do that. Around this time, I had a weird thing where I was able to use my hips and glutes after a certain period of time. So I was practicing essentially backwards because once I was upright, I could use my hips and my glutes the entirety of the race. But then I was like, can I use it for 3 steps onwards? Can I use it for 2 steps onwards, 1 step onwards, and then from the blocks onwards? And that's essentially how I improved my blocks. I just worked my way backwards until I was able to do it. So my arms drives back, but my arm is clearly bent, which is something we do not want because that arm can be in a much better position. It should also be straight, but this is still a problem I have to this day. I'd say around here would be good. So you don't want your arms to be up as high as possible because we're no longer, we want the arrows essentially in this case to slowly drop until you get into a bent arm position. But this start again was a bit faster. It's really only optimized for a 60. I'm lucky in the sense by this point I already knew how to open up, so I wouldn't make the same mistakes I'd make in the first video if I'm running 100 meters, though I didn't run 100 meters at start. So I got off easy, like I said, but I've still been working on my start. And then I think, yeah, you can actually see straight away, if you look at the entirety of the legs, I'm pushing with my quads instead of my hips and my glutes, and it's evident by how my foot swings forwards. Because my foot swings forwards and the position of my legs changed. It was like this, and it is possible to come down directly behind you, because that's the plan. I want my leg to go this way straight afterwards, but instead my leg swings out from the knee. Oh no, wait, like this, but then my leg swings out from the knee, my angles change, and then I'm closer to the ground because instead of trying to go down, I let my leg swing out, and I can only do one of the two. So I contact the ground before I can really change the really change the angle of the direction I'm trying to put the force into, so I land on the ground like that. And you can even see, if you look, this frame, the quad's about the same. This frame, the quads drops down a bit, but mainly it's just because it's extending. And then in this frame, my leg completely drops down, and don't even have to check, but I'm not underneath my center of mass. And then I have to have a really, really, really long drive out. And then if you look here, the distance between the steps are long, because essentially my leg should be straight, but it's bent instead. There shouldn't be an angle. Not until I've pushed off the ground as I try to make it recover. Before then, there shouldn't be an angle. My leg should be completely straight, something I'm still trying to work on achieving. And that would allow me to drive my foot forwards just a bit more than how much I'm doing right now. And the next step, though, this is where you can actually see me using my hips. And basically onwards, I should still be using my hips, because you can actually see my leg drops, not my leg swinging out. Then I'm able to push. And if you look at where I contact the ground, I don't even have to check. You can already see it's definitely underneath me. And then for the next step, I think it might just be my left leg just had a problem, because even now it kind of seems like it's swinging out. But other than that, that's roughly how I did the start. And I believe this start got me an unofficial, obviously, time for 10 meters of about 2:27, I think. If you look at the angles out of the blocks, on first contact, with the floor, I achieved an angle of about 39. And if you wind back to the first video and look at what I got for that, it was about 38, unless I'm messed up a bit. Yeah, I have. There we go. That's roughly straight. So not too big of a change, and obviously makes sense why, because the start is very strength dominant. So unless you make drastic changes in your start, or you make drastic changes in your form, there's not going to be a big difference. And since I wasn't able to use the main movers in sprinting, the hips and the glutes, I wasn't able to drastically change my power output, because the amount of power you have in that mid area is much stronger than what your quads should be able to produce anyway. So once I figured out how to do that, these angles they dropped massively. But until then, this is the only angles I was able to achieve. So 37 for the first step, and then for the second step, there's not much need to check, because it's kind of similar to the second step on this one. The foot actually the third step, I should say, the foot just extends. It just lands. And second step, the foot just lands. It doesn't go directly underneath me. It's the same thing. So the angle is going to be a bit stupid. But on the third step, we can see that the angle changes. So my body does rise, but it's kind of lucky in the sense that it doesn't have to rise as much as it should have had to, because from there the angle should just continue to drop, but instead it didn't. So my body was able to get off quite easy. And looking at the angle, it's about 36, probably a bit bigger, because the first angle was 39 or 37. Whilst this, let me even check actually. So let's see. First step is about 38. Yeah, okay, so maybe the third step was a bit accurate. But other than that, you kind of can't see much activation from my midsection, because I'm not properly firing. But when I am properly firing, you should be able to see just my body just tighten really, really strong, and then relax is actually quite visible, because it will happen at this portion of the motion or the movement where my leg's completely straight, fully tight, and then relax. I'm able to drag in my foot fast enough to allow that other foot to drive down, which you can kind of see happen in this step. But in this step, there isn't any of that. My foot just comes through slowly, which resulted in me getting 2:27. I actually believe that is correct. 2:27 in that 10 meter when I timed it, compared to something faster that I easily could have achieved and have achieved right now. But once I figured out how to fire from my glutes over here and be able to drive through my hips, everything got better. But one thing is, there's a lot of air time where I'm doing nothing. Because if you look at this step right here, push off, I'm completely out of blocks. Completely out of blocks. And I only move my body now. When I should have moved it, my front leg anyway, when I should have moved it here. It's still in the same position. It's just staying still, not doing anything. And this is just because the arms are staying still, not doing anything. And I'm pretty sure I have the same problem in this video too, unless I rush my start completely. Well, in this video, there was another problem, which is just my leg was too low, which is a problem I still have, because the angle of my feet out of the blocks, they should come, and the angle should be about that. This would essentially be how my feet are supposed to be as I come out of the blocks. They should come up higher than this, and it should slightly drop down to this so I can push down efficiently, but it doesn't. So it makes it so my foot's able to drag out of the blocks. My front foot, your back foot, like in this position, your back foot dragging out of the blocks is a problem, but it's not too big of a deal because that's expected. But for it to happen for your front foot is very bad, because if you drag out of the blocks for your first three, I'd say you generally drag out for 2 steps. If you drag out of the blocks for 2 steps, that means this step at this foot at the back, that's going to drag, and then this foot at the back now, that's going to drag, and then you're not going to have any more drag. That's two steps essentially. But if your front foot's dragging, that means your front step is going to also, your front foot's also going to drag, which is very bad. And this is happening because I'm still firing from my quads. Even to this day, I still fire from my quads in this position, trying to come out of the blocks efficiently. I have been able to come out of the blocks without firing from my quads, but it's very difficult to do while still applying force, and it's something I'm still working on achieving. But when I am able to do that, the amount of force you can apply is great. And yeah, that's the 2 block starts that I had at basically the start of the season. Oh, no, not even the start of the season. Basically, start of preseason and the end of preseason. These are the starts that I had. And in fast motion, no, normal motion, this is what it looks like. One thing I even forgot about is I have a really slow reaction time when the camera shakes. In fact, you can even see here, someone's clapping for me. That part of the shadow right there, that moves inwards. And the clap's been initiated. It's 0.227. And my reaction to that is at 0.525, which is about 0.3, a bit under that. That's very slow. You could say I was tired or fatigued, but that's very slow. But other than that, yeah, that's just the starts I had and how I've progressed from the start. From this start, oh whoops, that is not a circle. From this start to this one, there isn't too big of a difference. It's just more on how I execute it and try and figure out how to actually fire from my hips and my glutes so that I'm able to do it properly, so that my body is as efficient out of the blocks as I can possibly make it. And these are my 2 starts.